This is K.M. Weiland, and you are listening to the 462nd episode of the Helping Writers Become Authors podcast. After struggling a little bit at the first of the year to get my outline for the final book in my Portal Fantasy trilogy, I took February off and then dived back in the middle of March. There's a quote from Margaret Atwood that I've always liked, and sometimes have forgotten to heed, which is, you don't always know when a story is ready to be written, but you always know when it's not ready. For me, this experience was a good reminder that creativity does not operate on a schedule. Just because a book is there to be written, and I'm there to write it, won't always mean it's ready to be written. For me, taking that extra month this year to get my creativity flowing made all the difference. I'm now outlining like crazy, enjoying the spring season of renewal, and hoping to get lots of other projects done while I'm at it, including a couple of new writing craft books, which may be ready by as early as the end of this year. So we'll see how that goes. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this week's podcast, 5 Ways to Use Theme to Create Character Arcs, and vice versa. What is the easiest way to find your story's theme and make it stick? Although any discussion of theme is multifaceted, one of the best ways to approach this complex topic is through the realization that you can use theme to create character arc, and vice versa. When asked to explain what a particular story is about, some people may respond with a plot answer. It's about the end of the world. Others may even respond with a theme answer. It's about whether it's morally acceptable to save a few at the cost of the many. But implicit within either answer is character. Indeed, the third possible answer is, of course, straight up about the characters. It's about astronauts. The end of the world and its incumbent moral quandaries are hardly interesting unless people are involved, or at least anthropomorphic entities. Watership Down, after all, is an extremely engaging apocalypse. So, am I saying story is really character? Because a couple weeks ago I said story is really theme, so what gives? If theme is a story's soul and plot is its mind, then character is its heart. Character is always and ever the life force of story. But what is life without meaning? Even in stories that wish to posit the meaning of life is there is no meaning, that's still a meaning. That's still a theme. The bottom line is you can't have a proper story without people, characters, doing stuff, plot, the very highlighting of which inevitably comments upon reality, theme. Together, this trinity of storytelling mutually generates the text, context, and subtext. The outer conflict, represented by plot, exists on the story's exterior and most visual level. This is the text. The inner conflict, represented by character arc, exists on the story's interior level. This is the context. It provides the first layer of commentary on the plot's events. When viewed through the differing context of different characters' inner struggles, a plot's text can take on many different meanings. And finally, the story's theme nestles in the center of the Venn. It may never be seen, it may never be explicitly spoken of or referenced, but even silent, it creates the subtext. Depending on how the other two elements are presented, this subtext may either cohesively support or ironically juxtapose the story's text and context. In short, it would seem the character's personal relationship with the plot events is what creates the thematic subtext. And this is 100% true. But if viewed from another direction, it becomes clear that an aware author can also shape the story in the opposite direction by consciously using theme to create character arc. Effective character arcs are inherently related to thematic presentation. This means all discussions of character arc are really discussions of theme. Character arc is, in itself, a deep and complex subject, which I've explored in many other posts, and of course, my book, Creating Character Arcs, and its companion workbook. For the sake of expediency, today's episode assumes a basic understanding of character arc principles, but if you want more info, check out the proceeding on my site. Now, today I want to talk specifically about how theme creates character arc and/or character arc creates theme, depending on which end the author tugs first. I'm necessarily talking about each of these aspects in partial isolation. 2 weeks ago, we talked about how to identify your thematic premise, and next week we'll talk about manifesting theme in the outer conflict of your story's plot. But don't forget that each is part of the larger symbiosis. None of these three elements, theme, character, and plot, are created in isolation. Instead, the author must employ what I call the bob and weave. If you have a notion of what you want your theme to be, you might start by investigating how that could play out in the plot, which might prompt you to start developing suitable characters, which might bring you back to questions of plot, and on, back and forth, back and forth. For every little bit you develop theme, you must develop character and plot apace. So how can you use theme to create character arc? And how can you use your character arc to help you identify and solidify your theme? Following is a 5-part checklist that will help you identify the thematic pieces already at play and then use them to generate further ideas that will harmonize your story into a single, unified idea. Number 1, the thematic premise's explicit argument. As we talked about 2 weeks ago, the essence of your theme will be summed up in its thematic premise. There are many ways this premise might be expressed, everything from a single word to a fully realized sentence. When using the thematic premise to develop character arc, the central tenet you're most interested in is its argument. Implicit within even the most amoral thematic premise will be a central question. That question is going to produce the heart of your protagonist's character arc. This is the question that will drive his quest throughout the story. The answer may end up being explicit, as with Dorothy Gale's There's No Place Like Home, or it may be deeply implicit, as we've talked about previously with The Great Escape's The Human Spirit is Indomitable. Either way, the search for this answer will define your protagonist's inner conflict. For example, in Charles Dickens's A Christmas Carol, the thematic premise's argument might be turned into the question, what determines the worth of a life? In Charles Portis's True Grit, the thematic premise's argument might be turned into the question, is justice a personal responsibility? And in Mario Puzo's The Godfather, the thematic premise's argument might be turned into the question, does defense of one's family justify all means? 2. Inner conflict, part 1, lie versus truth. A story's theme is a posited truth about life. This truth may be inherently moral, such as what does it mean to be a good person, or it may be existential, such as what is life all about. Either way, the story will indicate that a certain truth is indeed true. Necessarily, where there is a proposed truth, there must also be opposing untruths or lies. And how does a story explore these truths and lies? Not, your readers sincerely hope, through lengthy sermon-y exposition in which they are told what's what and what's not. Rather, readers want to be shown. They want to see your proposed truth acted out in a realistic simulation. Whether the proposed truth can hold up under stressful reality will be proven or disproven by how well that truth and its opposing lies serve your character over the course of the story. Your story's outer conflict will deal with outer antagonists, people and situations that throw up obstacles between the protagonist and the larger story goal. The inner conflict, however, is ultimately a battleground of the mind, heart, and soul. No matter what type of arc you're using, positive change, flat, or negative change, the story's central truth will be the crucial piece needed for the characters to achieve positive ends within their quests. If they resolve their inner conflicts by embracing the truth, the outer conflict will follow suit. If they cling to the lie and prove unable to embrace the truth, their external pursuits will end in, at best, hollow victories. For example, in A Christmas Carol, Scrooge overcomes his lie that the worth of a life is measured in money and embraces the truth that the worth of a life is measured in charity and goodwill. In True Grit, Maddie's steadfast truth that a careless attitude about justice will create social anarchy creates measurable change in the world and characters around her. And in The Godfather, Michael Corleone ends by embracing the lie that corruption and violence are a justified means to an end. 3. Inner conflict, part 2, want versus need. If we climb up another rung on the story ladder from abstract theme toward concrete plot, we find the next level in your character arc's development. The story's central inner conflict between lie and truth will ultimately translate directly into the character's want and need. The lie is rooted in, or is the catalyst for, one of the character's central wants. In change arcs, this lie-driven want will probably directly influence the character's plot goal. In a flat arc, the protagonist will already believe in the story's truth, but will have to contend with the wants of other characters whose adherence to the central lie will create external obstacles. At its broadest, the need is always the truth. What any lie-believing character needs is the truth. But like the want, the need will often translate into a literal object, person, or state within the external plot. In A Christmas Carol, Scrooge wants to make as much money as possible. What he needs is the love of his fellow human beings. In True Grit, Maddie's want of bringing her father's killer to justice is in alignment with the need of the world around her. And in The Godfather, Michael wants to protect his criminal family. What he needs is to leave the life of crime behind him. Number 4, inner conflict becoming outer conflict. Your character's inner conflict cannot exist in a vacuum. The inner conflict must be caused by, and in turn, must cause the outer conflict. This is a direct development of the want and need. In order to bring all of the big three, theme, character, and plot, into alignment, the lie and truth must be expressed as the want and need. Depending on the nature of your story and the type of arc you've chosen for your characters, they will likely be forced to choose between what they want and what they need. This will be the externalized metaphor that proves the corresponding choice between the theme's lie and truth. Readers will never need to be hit over the head with a moral of the story when they can be shown a character's wrenching choice between two concrete objects, people, or states of being. This decision should never come easily. If the posited right choice is obviously better than the wrong choice, the thematic argument will lack teeth. If the right choice is easy, why should the character need to experience any inner conflict at all? This is why the argument between lie and truth must truly be an argument. If the truth that posits murderers are evil is opposed by the simplistic lie that murderers are good, there is no argument. But if the lie is complex enough to allow the author to explore why, for instance, a defense lawyer might truly believe her psychopathic client deserves not to be punished, then suddenly you have an interesting premise that can be played out in the external conflict with extremely high stakes. In A Christmas Carol, Scrooge must choose between facing the monumental weight of his wasted life or going to his grave unperturbed. In True Grit, Maddie must choose between pursuing her father's killer and her own safety. And in The Godfather, Michael must choose between living a righteous life or protecting his family by any means. And 5, Change within the character, change within the plot. The surest way to check whether your theme is in harmony with your characters, and therefore your plot, is to hone in on what changes within your story. How are the characters, particularly the protagonist, different at the end of the story from how they were at the beginning? If there are no changes, then the story form will be fundamentally problematic. Another problem may arise when the character changes, but not in alignment with the thematic premise. This is a sign of a disconnect at some point in the story. Even if you've attempted to paste a different theme over the top, what your story is really about is always rooted in the change that occurs in your characters and their world. When we see theme fully integrated with other story elements, that theme will always be an active force, either working change upon the protagonist or worked by him upon other characters. For example, in A Christmas Carol, Scrooge changes from a miser in the story's beginning to a repentant, joyous, and charitable man in the end. In True Grit, Maddie has wrought change upon the world around her, bringing an end to her father's murderer and the outlaw gang he ran with, as well as inspiring actions in the complacent and self-serving lives of the lawmen she encountered on her journey. And in The Godfather, Michael changes from a clean-cut young war hero with a legitimate career to a ruthless mafia don. When theme is a message imposed upon a story, the result often feels disconnected or even heavy-handed. But when the author works with the theme via the characters, the story's truth will arise beautifully and powerfully as part of an organic whole. So tell me your opinion. Have you ever tried to use theme to create character arcs, or vice versa? If you'd like to be a part of the fabulous Word Player community over on my site and join in the conversation on this subject, be sure to stop by the website at helpingwritersbecomeauthors.com. You can always find a transcript of the most recent podcast and add your voice to the discussion by visiting the first post on the site's homepage. And don't forget that if you're looking for an older post, you can always find those by putting the podcast title in the search field at the top of the right-hand column. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can subscribe on iTunes. And if you'd like to support helping writers become authors, I would totally appreciate it if you'd consider taking the time to leave a quick rating or review on iTunes. Thank you so much for listening to the Helping Writers Become Authors podcast, and be sure to check back again next week.